Well, there he goes. He's probably going on. All right, hello there, thrill seekers. Just wanted to. Ziggy started barking and then ran off to the corner of the yard. So probably his friend Hercules is over there because he's got a doggy friend who lives in the catty corner house behind ours. So he likes to go see Hercules sometimes when Hercules shows up. Yep, I can hear him. So. I wanted to talk to you about something that is vaguely related to the music clip that I stuck at the beginning of this, which is my cover of Ain't That Enough by Teenage Fan Club. I did that months and months and months ago, maybe a year ago, but I just now got around to putting it up a few days ago anyway. And it has to do with that in the very tangential sense that what I want to talk to you about today appeared in the comments section under that video. Here's a little pro tip. If you want to get my attention, I get a lot fewer comments under the music videos than I do under the Buddhist videos. So sometimes I notice them more because of that. And a few people have figured that out, like this guy who left a comment under that video, a Buddhist comment under a music video. And it's to do with the concept of Sangha, the Buddhist community. Now, I've thought this through a few times before I came out here to do the video over the last 3 or 4 days, and I haven't really reached any conclusion, but I decided to do the video anyway, and this is going to be one of my many inconclusive videos. So remember that when you decide to comment on it, is that I'm not trying to reach a kind of a final conclusion or something that fits everybody. I just want to talk about my own experiences, my own view of this matter. So let me read you the exchange that occurred under the video for Ain't That Enough, and then we'll talk about it. So the person putting the commenter person says, when you were at the beginning of your path to become a Buddhist, did you face the problem of the lack of a Buddhist community? If yes, how did you deal with it? And my answer was, not really. I was not looking for a Buddhist community. I had a teacher and he had a little tiny group of 4 or 5 people who sat zazen with him sometimes, and that was enough for me. And I asked him what he was looking for, and he says, a small community, at least 20 to 30 people with whom I can practice Buddhist activities inside the temple and meet regularly in real life outside the temple. And I said, they're all over the place, try Google. I'm not trying to be facetious, but that's the best answer I can really do. And the commenter replied, how did you face difficult times without the help of a Buddhist community? I said, I had friends. Most of my friends were not Buddhists. They still aren't. Most of the people in the Sanghas I was part of were not my friends. I don't hang out with Buddhists very much, and I didn't. I found Buddhists to be generally unreliable as friends or as a support system. And this is, again, my personal view. This is what I've found in my own personal life. I'm not trying to say that in general for Buddhists in general. And the commenter answered, I thought that being surrounded by people who were Buddhist, my practice would have been improved. I also thought it was better to have a Buddhist wife because she would have my own beliefs and encourage me on what I do. So how can I improve my self-discipline and my practice on my own without depending on others? So this this issue of Buddhist community has been kind of a thing for me for as long as I've practiced, I think. There is a very strong teaching within Buddhism, especially Dogen does this a lot, to revere the 3 treasures, which are Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So Buddha is the Buddha, and you can think of that as the sort of cosmic Buddha, not necessarily the person who lived 2,500 years ago. The Dharma is the teachings, that's an easy one. And the Sangha, that's the Buddhist community. That's the hard one for me, because I'm not a community person. In my life, I've found community in a few places. And the first one in my sort of adult life that I remember really feeling a sense of community with was the punk rock community in Akron, Ohio, when I joined Zero Defects and when I got with those people who were part of that. That was a very strong sense of community in the sense of a kind of support group of friends who you could depend on, some of whom are still my friends even today, 40 years later or whatever it is, I don't know, a long time later. So there was that. But that kind of fell apart rather quickly. Within maybe 2 years, it was mostly kind of gone. Mainly because, and this is maybe applies to Buddhism too to a certain extent, as what I found with the punk rock community is the bigger it got, the worse it got. So when it was a core group, a very small core group of people who were really dedicated to what we were doing, that was great. But once it started to get bigger and started to bring in more and more people, these other people weren't nearly as committed to it. They were more into the fashion and the violence of the slam dancing and all that stuff, and I just didn't like it anymore. About 10 years later, I ended up in Japan, and for my first year there, I was in this little city called Takaoka in Toyama-ken, Toyama Prefecture, and there was a small group of expats, mostly English teachers, who I fell in with, and there I felt another, sense of strong community, but that only lasted a year because my contract went up and blah, 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 it doesn't matter. Then next, when I joined Tsuburaya Productions, the company that makes Ultraman, there was a very strong sense of community among the people who worked at that company, and that was really nice. Let's go to the next one. The next one, it took a long time to happen, and it's what's going on right now. I am married to a woman whose parents are Mexican. She was born in the U.S. Her parents were both Mexican immigrants, and Mexican people have this really strong sense of family, so I've kind of fallen into this family community, which is one of the reasons I didn't post any videos over the holidays, because I was with them pretty much 24/7 for 2 weeks or something like that. At least it felt that way, and it was fine. One place that I haven't felt that kind of community was in the Buddhist communities that I was part of. I'm not trying to make it sound like I had a lot of negative experiences with those communities, but it wasn't, what does my questioner say here? He wants to find a group of 20 or 30 people with whom I can practice Buddhist activities inside the temple and meet regularly in real life outside the temple. Well, that's something that never happened for me with Buddhist communities. What would happen was, let's take the first community I was part of, the one in Kent, Ohio, the Kent Zendo. It was at that time about 4 or 5 people, really small, tiny group. I may have swelled up to 10 people on rare occasions, but really tiny group. And we got together to practice Zazen. And after practicing Zazen, we would have a little bit of tea or something with our teacher and have a little talk about Buddhist subjects, Dogen or whatever. I don't really remember all the things we covered. And then we split up, and I don't think of any of those people that I actually hung out with or saw outside of that setting. When I moved into the Kent Zendo a few years later, I was seeing the people who lived there, but they weren't Zen practitioners. Other than me, the other people who lived at the Kent Zendo's physical space, I didn't see them much at the Zazen meetings, so that was a different sort of thing. With Nishijima Roshi's community, exactly the same thing. We met on Saturdays to do Zazen, and we practiced Zazen together, and then we went our separate ways. Only one person out of that group, which I was with for a long time, really became any sort of a friend, like somebody I would see outside of that, but even that wasn't very often. I wouldn't count this person as like one of my best friends or anything. It was just somebody I would occasionally see outside of those settings. So for me, the Buddhist community was people to practice with. So that's where they were helpful. To be part of a group of people who were dedicated to doing Buddhist practice and studying Buddhist philosophy. that was useful because it kind of helps to have some encouragement, to feel like you're not alone in this. And there's a sort of, I don't like to get too woo-woo with this, but there is a sort of something, and those of you who have experienced it can vouch for this, and those of you who haven't will probably think I'm just talking woo-woo. But there's something that happens with when you get a group of people together to do Zazen together. There's something that makes the Zazen different, experientially different. And I've liked those groups. I've joined other sort of groups which I never considered myself to be really a part of, but I kind of slip in and slip out, like Tassajara. Let's see, I was just up at, what's it called? Hokyoji. A few months ago. Was it a few months ago or was it a year ago? Anyway, I don't remember. A while ago. And I've been with a group there in Minnesota. I've joined that group a handful of times, and same thing. Felt this kind of sense of we're all working on Zazen together, and once we're done with the Zen thing, then we're done. We're not hanging out. We're not eating burgers together, or going to movies together, or going bowling together, or what have you. It's not a sort of hangout group like people, let me read what he says again, meet regularly in real life outside the temple. That wasn't happening. So to me, that's been the main usefulness of a Buddhist community, was to encouragement to practice, encouragement to study. When I say that I found them kind of unreliable as friends, or what does I say, or a support system, that's what I said. I mean that one of the facets of a sort of minority religious group, I think, is this, I don't like to use the word cult in here, because I that has a bad, that's a bad sounding word, but it does have the aspect of a cult in which you're sort of expected to toe the party line. I don't know what I want to say. Again, I'm saying this is kind of an inconclusive video, but you're kind of expected to believe what everybody believes, and this is why I very much object to things like what's happening with Upaya Zen Center under Joan Halifax, or the Brooklyn Zen Center, or those are the most severe examples I can think of, but there are other examples all over the United States for sure, and probably in other places, where politics becomes the dominant thing. So the Buddhist group turns into actually a political activist group, and everyone in the organization is expected to adhere to the beliefs and what have you of the political activist mindset that forms there. And to me, this makes it very difficult for the Buddhist organizations who turn into those sort of things to have a strong foundation in practice. Because if I'm going to a group, he's probably barking at Hercules again. If I'm going to a group for practice and for study of the Buddhist Dharma, I'm not there to talk politics. I'm not there to talk activism. I'm not there to talk about, whatever, whose lives matter or any of these kind of things. It's for the sole purpose of Buddhist practice, which is why I kind of liken it to something like taking a karate class. I think that's probably the closest sort of analog, because the situation, I think, is almost exactly the same. If you go to a group to practice karate, you want to go and practice all your karate moves and things for the hour or 2 hours or whatever you're in there. Maybe study the philosophy of karate. I don't know if they do that. I think in what's that? Some of the other forms of martial arts, they have more philosophical stuff than karate. But anyway, you want to do that, and you want to do that for your time in there, and you don't really care that much about becoming friends with them. To the extent that you start to look at it as your friend group or your support group, what you're going to get into, this is where I was kind of going with that cult thing I said. You kind of get into there's Hercules. Yeah, I don't know if you can hear him on this microphone. I'm going to have to go introduce them in a second here. But you end up with that sort of a thing happening, which I think is kind of unhealthy for practice. In a monastic situation, and maybe my friend Shozan Jack Haubner, who does the YouTube channel Zen Confidential, might want to weigh in on this, so I'll send him this video and ask him if he wants to say anything about this, because he's had more experience with the monastic side of things. So if you're living together 24/7 with a group of people dedicated to Zazen, what it's supposed to be, the schedules and the monastic rules and things like that are set up to try to make you focused completely on Zen practice, Zen philosophy for the 24/7 time, however long you're in that monastic setting. And I don't think it develops into something where you're going bowling together or hanging out together. Although I do know from some of the things I've seen at various monasteries I've visited that kind of happens. Like I used to see the monks at Tokein Temple hanging out and watching TV together and stuff like that. But I imagine the situation in a monastic setting is more analogous to a co-worker setting. This is kind of where I was going with to talk about Tsuburaya Productions when I was there. Those were my co-workers, and we were dedicated to this, promoting and making Ultraman, and it wasn't necessarily that we had a lot of other things in common, although some of us did, and that's why I mentioned that became a friend group, because there were a handful of us who really had a lot of other things in common, and they became friends with me. But I don't think you necessarily need to have a lot of things in common in order. What you really need to have in common is your interest and dedication to the Buddhist practice and Buddhist philosophy. Everything else, your politics, your taste in music, the kind of movies you like, who you want to sleep with, who you think should be sleeping with other people or whatever, people get very interested in those kind of things. It doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter. I mean, I know in a lot of Buddhist groups in America these days, it matters intensely, those things, and that's again why I think it's a problem, because it shouldn't matter at all. What should matter is your practice. Now, this thing about finding friends and family or friends to hang out with and marrying somebody who's a Buddhist, my wife isn't. I don't think she thinks of herself as a Buddhist at all. She has occasionally done Zazen, but not very often, a handful of times. Doesn't seem to be very interested in it. The people I know who do stuff similar to me often have spouses who have no interest in this stuff, and I don't. My personal experience of that is doesn't matter. It doesn't seem to make that much difference. The other thing about a community. When I talk about the family community that I'm part of now with my wife's family, one of the great things about that is we're kind of stuck together even in spite of the fact that we don't agree on everything. So these kind of communities, I think, are better than some community that's trying to be based on a single thing and expand that out into their entire lives, and try to agree on everything and meet in every possible way. This is one of the things that happens with online communities. It's so easy to sort of kick somebody out or to leave yourself in one of those communities that you get very picky about, everybody has to believe exactly the same damn thing. What was good about the family that I'm part of now, or the group of expats in Japan that I was part of, or the group in Tsuburaya Productions that I was part of, or even the punk rock group, was we didn't necessarily all have to agree on the same thing, and there wasn't this sort of like party line that had to be towed in terms of belief, belief-based groups, I think, can be really tricky if you try to expand that out into your whole life. And I kind of feel like, for my money, for what it's worth, for my opinion, it's best to kind of keep that stuff a bit compartmentalized, and just, the Buddhist community is for the practice and study of Buddhism and nothing else. and not to be your friends, and not to be your people to eat ice cream with, and to go watch Wicked with, or whatever. It's something you're there to work on this specific thing. Again, back to my analogy of the karate class. Okay, that's about all I can say on this subject. And again, I feel like it's very inconclusive. So when you're leaving comments about it, remember that I'm not trying to reach this conclusion or a universal sort of thing. I'm not trying to say how this should work out universally. Just really my own kind of perspective on it. All right, if you want to donate to me, keeping my little... I don't know. I can't think of a segue. If you want to donate to me, you can go to the URL that you're seeing on the screen below, which is hardcorezen.info/donate. That is hardcorezen.info/donate. That's where you'll find my PayPal and Patreon accounts. You can also find them in the description section below if you're looking at this on YouTube. That's how I make most of my living, and I appreciate your support. But as always, you don't got to support me if you don't want to support me. All right, we will see you next time. Have a good time all the time. Laters. Bye. You want to go look for Hercules? Let's go look for Hercules. Okay. Let's go look for Hercules. Come on. Is he over there? Is he over there? Is he behind the fence? Is he over there? I'm not sure if he is over there anymore. He might have gone inside. Let's go check. Hey, Hercules. Hey, Hercules. You want to see Ziggy? Okay. Here's my usual view of Hercules. All right. Say hi to Hercules.